Welcome in, Soccer Down Here PM, the show that needs a name. Our co-host needs to come up with it. You see Jessica Charman hanging out with us. It's on her. We have a name. Jess came up with it. That's the rules. I don't know. I just made the rules up. So, I mean,
you've stunned her.
We're just making things up.
Those are effective rules. I like those rules, actually.
I don't know.
Hey, if anyone wants to at me on the Twitter, they are more than welcome to at and come up with whatever idea they may have.
Yes, because this will be a regular thing. It might move around in the programming grid because we do expect to have soccer over there live from the Brewhouse Cafe again at some point. We're getting close. Our friends at the Brewhouse are open, which is a good thing. They are open on the patio with a limited spacing kind of thing, so we don't want to take up any of that space. We want them to make as much money as possible right now. We will be back at the Brewhouse soon. We will have MLS to talk about very soon. Looks like we're going to get an update, according to Janusz Mihalik, on Wednesday as to what is next, what the schedule is going to look like. I don't know if they're going to do like a live draw show. They should, because I'm all in on this. I want something crazy. I want like Alexi Lawless playing an acoustic guitar to open the show. Stuart Holden can pull ping pong balls out of the pot over to the side, and we can see
Stephen A. Smith sitting there
you're
commenting
up
on
the networks, John. We were on Fox, and you went ESPN, and But anyway, mainly we're doing a show tonight, so Jess doesn't have to watch the U.S.-England World Cup semifinal again because they're showing it on FS1.
God, please. I'm so glad I didn't know that. We watched that game together, Jason. Do you remember watching that game together?
I know.
Oh, the heartbreak, the emotion, the roller coaster, the after show, the questions that I got tweeted afterwards. I mean, I feel like that one is etched in my forever bank of games, and it will be one of the so close yet so far. But you know what? We learned from it. It was an experience, and it was an exciting game for a neutral. Yeah. And as I have got over the heartbreak, I do realize that it was a great thing for women's soccer to have such a close, well-fought game between two nations. And now I can cry a little bit.
There you go.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it. Hey, I'll say it. I said it then. I've said it ever since. England was the better team. I think England was the better team in the match. I thought they played the better match. The U.S. was a little fortunate. The call that went to VAR was correct. I mean, it was a narrow, but it was correct. And, through the quality of play, I think England was the better team. I think the U.S. was kind of fortunate in the last couple of games of the tournament, to be honest. They got it done, and that's a credit to their mental strength. That's what they had, I think, above anybody else in the tournament. But they weren't the dominant team that I think some people expected them to be.
No, but we say all the time, don't we? Tough teams get it done, and the most successful teams are going to win on their off days, and that's what the U.S. did. England messed up on their big moments. You had the big penalty save. You had some dodgy finishing, not capitalizing on chances early on for the Lionesses, and it comes back to haunt you. And the U.S. and their big players got it done at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what it takes. We've got a few different things to talk about today. We've got some talk about the Lionesses and their upcoming managerial search. We've got some talk about women's soccer as a whole, the NWSL, about the Women's Super League, just in general. We've got some news, though, late in the afternoon. Spain is talking about looking at having fans in the stands for La Liga matches as soon as the end of this month. Not their first couple of weeks of play. It's so hard to call at this point. And I mean, I think honestly for American football's sake, they're probably standing and applauding at this because somebody's going to test it first. Because I thought the SEC and college football was going to be the first one to do it, because I didn't think the NFL would have fans for preseason games. They could get away with that. They could deal with that if there was any question. But I thought college football would go all in. Now you're going to have Spain do it, and you're going to have time to see what happens, sadly, and hopefully nothing, but we don't know.
You've got the test dummy. No one really wants to be the test dummy usually. Spain take the risk. Potentially, they have seen the success of the closed-door games. You know what, Germany, you've done your bit. Now it's our time up. And I'm wondering what kind of rules they're going to enforce. Have they mentioned anything like that in the article yet, Jason? Are there any upfront rules? No?
Nothing yet. I think they're still probably trying to figure out what that looks like and how this is going to go down, because the details of this are where my head goes to immediately. It's how are you going to do it? How are you going to make this look? Is it going to be full capacity? Is it going to be 10%? Is it going to be 25%? Some have talked about 30%. There really wasn't any detail on this. This is coming from a Twitter account, El Partidazo de Cope. It's just a group that covers the game in Spain, and it's honestly super simple. This is coming from Juan Antonio Alcala. The government is considering that from June 29, there can be a public in all stadiums in Spain at the same time. So they're going to, not even like certain cities are going to do it. Everybody's going to be able to do it from June 29. That'll give them, they come back this weekend. I don't know how many midweeks they have, but 2-3 match weeks. So probably about 5 or 6 with fans in the stands. And when you hear the dire straits that Barcelona's talking about being in, Real Madrid's going to be okay. They're going to balance their books this year, even if they don't have anybody. Barcelona's in trouble. Smaller teams have to be in big trouble. I'm assuming that has something to do with this decision.
Yeah, definitely money. We talked about League Two and the English leagues and how, ticket money is vital. So, yeah, they need to open the door for those fans. They can't afford to give any refunds back. And that's another thing. Who do you pick that gets to go? Is it your season ticket holders that have already paid their money? So you're not really making money. You're not just giving away money. Or do you do it? Start, charging people big bucks to pay your way in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you handle this, John. I don't think there's any kind of a roadmap to follow. It's going to be a guessing game all the way across the board, and it looks like they're going to be first of the major leagues because Germany hasn't talked about it. England's not going to do it. France can't decide if they're actually going to play or not. We'll see if they can give us any news on that. Yeah. MLS isn't going to do it in Orlando, so they're going to be first out of the others. And we saw what happened in Hungary. Hungary had their Hungarian Cup final, and they had the whole social distancing. They had three seats between every sold ticket. And what happened when the game started? Mask came off. Everybody ran behind the goals. And what happened when the game was finished? The players and the fans were celebrating together in that end.
Yep. Yeah. That's probably the best way to describe it. I would like to know what capacity is going to look like. And I was just trying to burn through the schedule between the 11th of June and roughly the 24th. And it looks like there's 9 or so midweek matches in addition to everything that would be standard on the weekends. So I want to know what social distancing is. I want to know what capacity is. I want to know essential personnel, and I want to know the guidelines. I mean, what we get from this particular tweet and all this information. All right, so if you're going to be the first ones in the door, yes, you will be the test case, pardon the pun, but I want to see what the rules of engagement are for this and how the other nations that have their sports going on will either just sit there and take what La Liga has and goes, okay, it worked for them at this rate, we'll take that rate too proportionally, or they're going to sit there and say, okay, we're learning from this, our percentage is going to be a little different. Is it going to be something that's going to be in agreement with what we see, or is it going to be something that's not going to be that many folks that you're going to be seeing on television? Is it going to be 10, 25, 50%? What's spacing and social distancing?
Mm-hmm.
That, for me, when we get more information, that's when I'm going to sit there. But right now, Jason, I agree with you that I'm kind of like, eh.
And it's how you hold those people accountable, though.
Yeah.
What policy do you have in place that makes them realize that they need to sit in their seats? Do you have, if there's a violation, that guess what, the next game is behind closed doors? Do you have a fine for the club that they're going to mean that they're going to take this more seriously? Because at the end of the day, look at it how it is in the public in general. If you have an advisory, people aren't going to follow it. People are going to go back to normal. People are in their safe space, per se, in terms of a soccer game. They're back to where they feel comfortable, where they feel normal. So you're going to have you're going to need to measures, because if everyone gets sick or everyone is seen not taking it seriously, then no other team or no other league is going to want to imitate or follow this. They're gonna steer well clear.
Yeah, they're going to be worried about that. They're also going to be worried about any spikes afterwards. And look, we're all in this uncharted territory with it. I mean, you've got the World Health Organization today with a report that we haven't seen the full report. I think it was MSNBC or CNBC published an article that was really difficult to follow. Like, is it all people who are asymptomatic it's not a big deal, they're not spreading the disease? Or, as a lot of people have said, when you start to kind of dig in a little bit deeper, is it pre-symptomatic people who then become symptomatic, which is a larger percentage than people who are just completely asymptomatic? Are they still shedding the disease and spreading it? We don't know. and I've seen the responses to this WHO report like, oh, well, if they had told us this before, they didn't know either. Nobody knows. No. We've never had this thing before, so we're all figuring it out. Spain is going to be bold with this if they go down this road. Now, there's still a lot of time.
Well, and at the same time, when it comes to people away from sporting venues and sporting arenas, it's the general population. What's testing procedures for those who are just not going to engage in that kind of stuff?
I'm assuming there's not any, because I don't think there's any way that any government in the world is going to be able to have a testing procedure for all of its population. It's not going to happen. Right. They can't mandate it. They can't make people do it either. So there's no testing procedure. You can do a pop-up station.
No, you can't pop up and test 20,000 fans and get the back instantly. It doesn't work like that.
There's some testing situations that they say you can have the results in 20 minutes, but you're not going to be able to have a security line of people doing a test. They have to wait 20 minutes and oh, you can't come in. Oh, you can. You can't. Yeah. You can't. That's not going to work either. So it's just, it is what it is. I mean, there's no answer here, and I think that's what we have to understand. People who are being very careful, people who are being cavalier about it, none of us really know. So we're all kind of guessing, and we're going to get some information from Spain one way or another. Hopefully it's good news, because if it's good news, then you could potentially have fans in MLS stands as soon as August. I see that USL League One teams are already talking about selling tickets for games. So, I mean, this is... The movement is in that direction. Spain is the first one to be this aggressive with it, and we'll see what happens. That's all we can really do.
All right, so then do you want me to introduce the Liverpool argument back into this?
Sure. I don't know where you're going to go with this.
Well, no, just all right. So initially, the idea of fans not being able to go inside the stadia and them congregating outside for celebratory reasons. If your capacity in La Liga isn't 100%, is La Liga going to sit there and say, look, for those of you that want to be there but aren't supposed to, stay home? Or are they going to have are they going to let folks congregate outside who aren't going to be a part of capacity?
You can't let people congregate outside. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. So, I mean, you're going to have stewards and the security that you would have had anyway out there, and you're going to have more stewards inside. I mean, you can't allow people to gather outside like that, because then you're defeating the purpose. So,
but that's why they have to be so smart about
Yeah.
how they decide to sell these tickets and distribute these tickets, because there's going to be loyal fans who are going to be peed off if they're just out. If it's for them, if it's based on financial needs and they're a season ticket holder, so they're gonna have to be careful with that. And let's be honest, there are going to be those people that show up, and again, they're going to need good policy to send them back.
yeah, this is going to be really tricky. This is going to be really difficult for Spain to sort out, and we'll see how they do it. We'll see if we have any more news for tomorrow morning on the show about any plans that we might learn about with how they're going to handle this. One other one before we get into the Lionesses, because I want to talk about the whole managerial search situation. We followed what's going on in Australia a decent bit, and they still don't know what they're going to do, except now they do know that they have 6 weeks to pay all outstanding wages to players before they can restart the competition. That's a new one. That we didn't know had been the case, that they had skipped some payments here towards the end. The league's highest earners are sacrificing more than 80% of their salaries to finish the rest of the season, which is 6 weeks plus the playoffs. They're doing that to allow the lower earners to keep a greater share. In exchange for that, the PFA, the Professional Footballers Australia organization, wants all the clubs to meet their outstanding payments this season. That had not been reported, that there had been issues with it. They're waiting on Fox to sort out how much Fox is going to do with the rest of the season, if they're going to pony up money going forward for future seasons, because they're trying to get out of their contract, according to reports. And Australia's got players who were out of contract as of May 31st, and they haven't sorted that out. A couple players who are out of contract have already signed with other clubs. A lot of those players are not in Australia, and they might not come back. It's a complete and utter mess. New Zealand is back to pretty much normal. They don't have any issues with coronavirus at this point. They haven't had a new case in over 2 weeks. Australia is not quite that lucky, but at the league side, Australia is a complete just they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know what they're going to do with Fox, and that's their money. I mean, that's where the money is coming from right now. They're not going to have fans in the stands. They're going to do the hub situation. The A-League is tied to the W League in Australia, and the W League is one of the better women's leagues in the world. They're going to take a huge hit, and I don't know what their situation is. I think their season runs opposite of the A-League time frame. I don't know what their plans are, and if the A-League clubs are going through this kind of problem, the W League clubs have to be going through it. And as we've seen, Jess, in England, like clubs who are doing well are struggling to meet the true obligations of their women's teams. Clubs in Australia, if they can't pay the men's players right now to finish the season, what are they going to do with the W League?
Yeah, it's doomed, and that's such a big issue. You've already seen W League players wanting to move out of the league and going elsewhere, and now if the money's not there, there's going to be even more movement towards leagues that potentially have financial backing. And when you're talking about men's players taking 80% pay cuts, there's no way the women are even on payroll at this point, and that's obviously making an assumption, but I would imagine that the women have been furloughed like in a lot of the English teams. That's going to be, unfortunately, not a priority to the people in charge of these clubs, particularly those that are affiliated, because at the end of the day, they probably don't see the women's league as the most important part of their business. It's not the part that draws in the most money. So if they're going to make even bigger financial sacrifices, it's going to go on the women's side. It's going to be a detriment in Australia. We saw them in the World Cup. They have potential. They have good players. They have good youth development. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a domestic league and your domestic league starts falling apart, you have to wonder if that's going to, come back and haunt the Australian women's national team.
So let's get into this. I think there's a couple things that we can start with in this discussion about the women's game as a whole. The money, the revenues are different. We know that there's no negative to say that like the Women's Super League doesn't bring in the money that the Premier League does. The NWSL doesn't bring in the money that MLS does. The W League doesn't bring in the same money. That's a reality. I think where I've kind of come to with it is there is growth potential in the business side. I think in all those leagues, if they're done correctly, you can make money in the women's game. It is a viable business. The World Cup last year showed us that. the successes with the Women's Super League, with the NWSL, with the W League. There are big success stories that show you it is a viable business and you can make money at it. But it feels like too often there are clubs who get into it and don't really fulfill every responsibility they have to do it the right way. And, maybe they're looking for a quick hit of money, and once they learn that, look, this is not going to be a quick investment. There is an investment that needs to be made. There's not going to be a quick return on it. Some people just don't keep committing to it. And Liverpool's a prime example of that. They're not the only club in the Women's Super League. Or
But it's a bad one.
They're a bad one right now because financially they're doing so well as a club as a whole, but the women's team feels like a complete afterthought.
Yeah, it's ironic at this point that you have on the men's side, they're 25 points ahead? Yeah. And they're bringing in bank and they're spending huge money on players. They're doing just fine. And on the women's side, they've just been relegated. And they've been relegated, yes, because they didn't perform. And yes, because disappointingly for them, there was still, 40% of games left to play. So they do feel hard done by. But on the flip side, this is a team that's won the Super League twice. They've just had a gradual decline because they're not investing. They're not buying players. You see players going to other clubs for bigger money. Look at Man City. Look at Chelsea, this year's champion. They are doing well because they're spending the big bucks. But realistically, how different financially are teams like Man City and Chelsea and Liverpool? Not that far apart. The difference is how much they're willing to delegate to their women's side. And I read something that disappointed me. Liverpool's spending a huge amount of money on a new training ground, a lovely new training facility. No place for the women's side there. They won't be included.
That's
and it's that separation. Yeah. It's the separation and the isolation that is so foul. I mean, I listened to we were talking about Eni Aluko earlier, Jason. When Eni Aluko was at Chelsea, they had to fight to get fed because they were so far at Cobham, so far away from the dining hall that the men used. They weren't allowed to use a dining hall. They had to get the food driven over to the women. And it wasn't until a couple of years that they got the food. Now, that to me, okay, you're not going to pay them the same money. Okay, they're not going to play in the stadium very often. It doesn't make sense to play in the stadium. That does make sense. That
sure.
They shouldn't play in the stadium. You're not selling the tickets. Why open it? Find a suitable venue. Tranmere Rovers is where Liverpool, it fits. But how you cannot give them the same access to the training field that has enough pitches for them to play, it's just dismal to me. And it's that separationalism that I think sends off the complete wrong message to young girls as well. How can they think that they're going to be professional football players if they're not going to be treated and allowed to play on the professional training field? That to me that rubbed me the wrong way reading that, and I was disappointed in Liverpool. I mean, that's a team. How difficult is it to make space for your women's team in your training facility? Your kids are going to play there. Your youth team is going to play there. So you're basically saying that your academy means more than that must hurt, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's insulting.
Yeah, it's just, Jess, I mean, you look at how the basics to be competitive aren't even being thought about for the women's side at one of the storied franchises in the Premier League, and it's right there in front of them, and for whatever reason, they choose not to go down this road and be a shining example of what can be for anyone who wants to embrace the sport on the women's side, whether you're a player, a fan, or what have you.
But you have to wonder, some of it stems from the FA. I mean, I read an article from the FA saying that it's Bundesliga, right? That the top four teams are being asked to contribute to the women's game, and the FA has basically outright said that they are not. They have no fixed obligations for the parent team or for any of the men's teams to offer anything in particular to the women's team. It's not expected. They were basically said it would be nice if anyone wants to, but we're not expecting it. And to me, it's so hypocritical because the FA talks so often about how they want to be the front runner in Europe for the female game. And when it goes right, they love it. When England's doing well in the World Cup, look at the growth we've made. But when it comes to something that's hitting you hard right now, they don't want to upset those big men's teams. They don't want to rub them the wrong way by telling them, hey, you just need to give, a couple 100,000 to the women's side. That's all it would take. It's not as expensive to run a women's team, but the FA doesn't want to do that because they're worried about upsetting their top guns. So when the women's game suits them, they're all for it. But when it needs some help, and that's why I would say that Bundesliga's, really shown that communal impact. I'm very impressed with that comparatively.
Yeah, what's really strange, so the Bundesliga, when all of this started with COVID-19, the top 4 clubs created a solidarity fund that was to benefit the third division men's teams who were outside of the 2 divisions of the Bundesliga and the Frauen Bundesliga, and specifically the women's teams who were not affiliated with Bundesliga clubs. So independent teams that are in the first division of the women's league got help from the Solidarity Fund. The Dutch created a Solidarity Fund with Ajax committing more than anybody else to this, and it was for just the grassroots game. I would assume the women were included in that. In England, there is a Solidarity Fund that I think comes off of the TV money. It comes off of different things. It's been there. But for them not even to say, like, hey, we have some money and we're going to commit a little bit more of it right now to the women because they need it a little bit more right now. And none of the teams are stepping up. I mean, it's not even where you need like Liverpool doesn't need a solidarity fund to help their women's team. They can just do it the right way. And I don't think anybody's asking for Liverpool to pay their women's players the same as the men. They're not asking for, the same investment level, anything. It's the respect at the training ground. And yeah, if the women have to train at a different time, okay. But I'm sure in a 24-hour day, you can find some time that the women can get on the field at the training ground and not have to go to Tranmere or go somewhere else to train. These things can be done. The basics of feeding them the same way, traveling them in a first-class way. Stuff like that. There shouldn't be a difference. Salary, yeah, we're talking about different revenues. We're talking about a completely different business between the two. But the basics of how you're treated, if you're going to wear the Liverpool kit, when the academy team is probably treated better in this sense than the pro adult women, that makes no sense. It's a bad investment, and it looks bad for the club. That's the thing that I don't get. They're a club that's always worried about perception.
Yeah,
this is a bad look.
Yeah, it's stuff like you even mentioned the kit. I have friends that still play in the Super League that probably get gear than the academy players, and that's stuff that doesn't cost the club barely anything. They get that stuff at market value. They not get a training jacket and sweatpants that fits them. And last year, training gear. Literally, women aren't expecting to get paid these huge $1 billion, contracts. They're real. They just want to be fully professional. Women feel is football right now. That's all they want. But they also just want the respect to actually be a professional. I don't play, but if you're not training in a professional way, if you're not driving to the games yourself, if there's not a nice bus, if the game is a certain distance away and you're expected to drive, that stuff is the stuff that drives me insane.
Okay, so you shared something with me earlier, the statement that you sent over to me. Who was that from?
The guy that created Chelsea Ladies. Let me pull his name up. My dad actually sent it to me. I'll give a shout out to my dad for that thread from Tony Farmer. I guess he managed Chelsea Ladies and helped set up their academies and all that jazz. And he was very outspoken about, what the FA is doing to women's football. And one of the things he really wanted to have a word about is the appointment and the job description for the Lionesses' new manager.
Yeah, and look, you have to have the basic advertisement. I mean, that's how these things go these days. I believe there was one for the U.S. men's national team as well. It's just part of the paperwork you got to do.
Did you apply?
What's that?
I said, did you apply, Jason?
No, I did not. I probably didn't meet the qualifications on it. I would not want that job, the way people turn on that guy so fast. Look, you have to do it, but as Tony Farmer points out in this statement, it's not essential to have a UEFA Pro license, and that's mandatory in the Premier League. It's not essential to have any experience in women's football. The whole thing about Phil Neville, so Tony Farmer not a fan of the Phil Neville appointment. You can tell from what he says in the statement. I think Phil Neville got them to a point that they hadn't been to before, and some of that might have happened anyway because they had a lot of talent coming through the system. I don't think he failed as the manager of that team, but I don't think he was going to get them to the next step.
And I don't think his heart was 100% in it. I think he was happy with where he went, and I think his goal was never to long-term transform the Lionesses.
I do think that he was fully committed while he was in the job, though. I don't think he had one foot in and one foot out. I saw enough of their build-up to the World Cup. I think he really put everything into that World Cup. And once that was over, it was kind of like, okay, I'm done.
Think back to his press conference after the game where who got injured? Remember the flying ninja kick or whatever right after the game on the sidelines? You know what I'm talking about. And he had his like big protective speech. Like that moment for me showed how much he cared about those players. There was no doubt in my mind that he cared. He cared about the result. He came in and he was a hated man. Let's be honest. He had a lot of doubters, and recently so. Like he had made some really dumb comments about women's sport for someone that was then going to be the head of women's, football. But he did well. He had them playing a great style of football. I think what my issue is how after the World Cup, there's a deflation. Let's be real. If you've watched any of England afterwards, it's flat now. It's different. And that's where you have to wonder whether his head is maybe now. He's already announced he's not going to be there. We're not sure if he's staying for the Olympics anymore, or they're being pushed back to 2021. So now you have to wonder, is his heart in it? And with him knowing that he's leaving, for me, I think you need to make that appointment and before the Olympics, and you need to start. He doesn't need to be in charge of the Olympics. We don't need one last farewell. We need to move on to the next generation.
If it had worked out where the Olympics were this year and that was it, okay, fine, that's it. While I do think he did a good job, I do think he was fully committed through the World Cup. He hasn't helped himself with things he said. He hasn't handled the PR side of it well. He's created ill will against him. That's all completely valid, but that shouldn't overshadow the job he did. The question now is, where do you go next? And the one that I think you have to make an offer to is Jill Ellis.
Yep.
I mean, even if, and I said it last year during the World Cup, and I ate the crow afterwards, I did not think she was going to be able to get the job done. I'm not a huge fan of her tactics, but she won back-to-back World Cups, and there's nobody else who can say that. There's nobody else who can say that they've done what she did. I think with her being available, even if she doesn't take it, England has to make that offer, right?
To. Yeah, you have to.
They have to at least court her. Is that fair?
I think that's it. I think it's almost like a polite offer. It would almost be disrespectful and foolish on the FA's part when you have been criticized so vehemently for hiring someone that had no knowledge of women's football, that had said it was a joke and that women belonged in the kitchen, pretty much. And then on the other hand, you have the 2 World Cup, and she's English, and she's beaten you. You got to be real. She knows the talent. Yeah. She has an understanding of the game. Yeah. She has experience. You're literally staring in the face of what people wanted you to hire when you hired Neville. So you have to give, that a go. Do I think she'll say yes? No, I think she's done. I think she's a bit burned out.
You don't think she's going to coach anymore? Period.
I don't know if on the international level. Maybe she'll do something.
NWSL?
Different. Potentially, or
I don't think NWSL. I do think if the right club opportunity came, she would take it. But in the NWSL, the only 2 that would make sense for her would be North Carolina or Portland. She's not going to go to an also-ran. There's no point. If somebody came in who was really investing on the women's side in England, I think she would be interested. If somebody else on the continent came in and was really investing, I think she'd be interested. I think England would be the only other national team that would have any kind of a pull for her.
Yeah,
like she's not going to go take a different one. I mean,
it's her
she
roots.
is. Yeah, exactly. And she would have the opportunity to, I think, prove any doubters that are left wrong if she goes and she takes England to another level. Outside of that, I mean, it's probably not likely that she takes it. So then what direction do you go? You have women's Super League managers. Where else? What other direction are you going to go? Because they open the door to go anywhere.
Yeah. I think that's where you look at. You look at your domestic leagues and you reward someone that has the experience of women's football, that understands your domestic league, your style of play. And you know what? You have to be careful, because when you hire a domestic league manager that knows their team, sometimes your international team becomes a little Chelsea, for instance. Let's say you hire Emma Hayes. Suddenly she knows all of her Chelsea players. Chelsea, they're the reigning champions. They just got crowned the title, so they've got quality players, and you have to have that concern that then they're in their own bubble of only wanting those players. And that's the one worry about hiring someone that's so internal. I like her as a coach. I think she's knowledgeable, but at the same time, does she compete with a resume of Ellis? No. But I think sometimes you take a risk, but I would love to see a female manager. And that's nothing against male managers. We've seen great. I mean, Spain's manager was a male, right? And he's awesome with his players. I've heard a lot of his, interactions with the players. But I think it'd be a nice different direction to go in after having someone like Neville and what's his face before that, Mark Sampson that didn't go too down. Yeah, he wasn't too popular either. So I think it'll be nice to go back to a female coach, because there is a different relationship between a female to female player. I know that from playing experience, and sometimes that's what you need. You need more of that almost nurturing development for the team.
Can I go with a complete wild card? I don't think she's even. I don't know if she's interested in managerial or not. I've always liked the way she thinks about the game. Kelly Smith.
Oh,
yes,
Kelly Smith.
I like that.
Is like one of the players that I grew up idolizing, and you've heard her as a pundit, right?
Yeah,
she's brilliant.
Such a
she knows the game.
Look at
she's
the game.
Smart. She's brilliant, and she'd probably pair up with like Casey Stoney or someone. You know what I mean? Like she's got or Jessica Chapman. You've got all these players or Katie Chapman, whatever. Chapman. I can't even remember what her. But you've got all these players from that era of the English team that. Maybe you get like a duo of a head coach and, the manager.
You do almost the Klinsmann and Yogi Love kind of idea.
Exactly. And two people that know what it means to wear that jersey and know what it means to fight the adversity of women's football. And I think that's maybe what Neville was missing at times. He had everything he wanted playing. He had it pretty easy in terms of, his career. And I think sometimes you need someone that knows what it means to put that shirt on without the huge financial gain. When they were playing for the Lionesses, they were doing it and actually taking pay cuts from their professional job. They were having to take time off. They weren't getting paid. So to have that passion restored, maybe that's what the next sort of generation needs a little bit more, is that appreciation and that desire and that humbleness that potentially doesn't always come from a male manager that's not had it handed to him, but that had it a lot easier in the sport than the people that he was managing.
Right.
Okay, so then, all right. So Jess, go ahead and rank us for me real quick. Obviously, Jill Ellis would be your number one. Who's on the short list after?
I like Emma Hayes a lot. Emma Hayes, Chelsea's head coach. Casey Stoney would be a decent one. I like Eni Aluko, but she's doing something else with Aston Villa right now.
I like her too.
Head of football development, but God, she's a lawyer. Like she's a professional lawyer. She's had experience over here in the US. Like I would like her to get into coaching and then potentially be some sort of assistant on the team, maybe like the finishing coach alongside Emma Hayes or something like that. That would be a good partnership.
So the Guardian ran an article the end of April when it started to become clear that Phil Neville was not going to come back. The three that we've talked about, Casey Stoney, who is at Manchester United and has done a good job with a team that kind of started from scratch and is now a team that you have to pay attention to in the Women's Super League. Emma Hayes, Jill Ellis. Laura Harvey is another one who's been mentioned. Formerly of Arsenal, currently Utah Royals, or previously Utah Royals, now U.S. Soccer U20. Could you pull that one off? She was believed to have been on the short list before Neville got the job. Maybe. I mean, she's a manager that a lot of people really, really like. So she would be a possibility. Nick Cushing is another one who I don't think is likely now. He was with Manchester City's women, and he became an assistant at NYCFC. So he's flipped over to that side.
He's made that switch to the men's game now. And
I don't think you go back at this point. The others that are mentioned as worthy of consideration were two that came to mind for me. We mentioned Portland and North Carolina. Mark Parsons of Portland, Paul Riley of North Carolina. Paul Riley would be an absolute no-brainer to at least make a phone call to. Yeah, I think Riley's done an amazing job at the club level, as good as anybody in the world right now. And it wouldn't be the female manager that maybe the team needs at this point, but he's one that I think probably need to talk to.
It's different. It doesn't count. For me, when we talk about a female manager, it's a female manager or someone that has experience with the women's game and has managed female players at a high level. That's the difference. He kind of gets a pass on that one because of that experience of working with women's football and the respect for the game. And I think that's the biggest thing. Respecting the game, seeing it for what it is, and taking it seriously is all you want from a manager.
Another one that's interesting is formerly of Lyon, won the Champions League twice, Reynald Pedros. He left Lyon last summer, so he is available right now. And probably another one you should talk to at this point. If he's available, give him a call, at least have that interview. I think you have to at least make it look like you're very interested in Jill Ellis.
Yes.
And I think Pedros would be the other one that you need to talk to right now because of what he's done in the women's game. The rest is putting feelers out.
And the rest are almost more, I feel like if you offer them the job, they take it. You know what I mean? Like, I think we need less convincing for a Casey Stoney and Emma Hayes. Maybe it's a little tougher because of what she's doing with Chelsea right now. You've taken them to the next level. But at the same time, it's harder to turn down managing a country like that.
Yeah.
That's a difficult one. And maybe you see it as, I've done a lot on the domestic side. Now I have the opportunity to use that knowledge I've gained in the club level and apply it internationally.
So we talked about the Women's Super League and kind of what's happened with it at this point. One big issue that I have, the NWSL is getting back on the field. The Frauen Bundesliga is getting back on the field. The Women's Super League is not. And, money's a huge element to it. I think we understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that at this point. As standalone businesses, the Women's League, no, it doesn't make sense for them to pay the amount of money it's going to take to come back. It's going to be very expensive. That's why League 2 isn't. That's why League 1 probably isn't. That's why Scotland, the Premiership, isn't. But with that FA support, if you're going to look at anything for the FA to get involved in and help, it would be the testing. It would be those unforeseen costs that you have to fulfill now to be able to get back on the field. If they just did that, if they just said, okay, there's 10 games left, whatever it works out to be, I think it's been basically priced out at about £150,000 to play that many games, to finish it out, have testing twice a week for the whole squad. £150,000 for the Women's Super League, 12 teams, right? That's a worthy investment. That's an investment that you have a solidarity fund, you have money to work with. That's where they should put it, no question.
And that's when you stop the criticism. Right now, they're not very popular. They're not popular with the fact that Liverpool got relegated when they still had plenty of chance to stay up. There was one team, I think they were only 3 points behind. It's not like a guaranteed drop. On the flip side, I'm pretty sure Man City aren't that thrilled either. Yeah. 1 point behind. Like, I get it. Points per game is what came into play. Yeah. But when it's that close, and yet you do that and you relegate teams, but then for the leagues below, you just wipe and disappear their season. for the National Leagues. You're just disappearing their seasons. It just seems like you're treating everyone differently, and you're pissing people off. And it wouldn't have taken. It's money. It's a lot of money, but it's not the end of the world financially to play those games. And the investment would have been more than just a financial investment. It would have been an investment to prove that you're taking the women's game seriously. And they're still coming out and talking about how, look at all the growth we've made in the last 2 years. And next year, now we've got plenty of time to plan. And 2021 is going to be our year. Well, how can you seriously expect people that follow the league to take that seriously when you yourself don't even take finishing the season seriously? You're satisfied with relegating a team that is 1 point or whatever behind. They still had 10 games to play. It baffles me, the irony of it all, you know? And Liverpool was the one team that said they were okay with coming back to play, right? Liverpool had said that they would have. Right. They're the one team in the Super League that said they could have fended for themselves and started up. So
I think they would have. I think Manchester City probably would have been all for it, knowing the points per game situation. I mean, you compare the salaries between League One, League Two, which are not playing, and the Women's Super League. The Women's Super League, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like if the FA had come out and said, we will cover everything with testing, we will cover everything with expenses related to COVID-19, you're probably talking in the £2.5 million range to get all of it done, all the extra cleaning, all that kind of stuff done. If you do that and you say to the clubs, we're going to do this so you can play, you have to fulfill the contracts, you have to finish paying people out. Even if there's no fans in the stands, you have to pay people out. That would be a reasonable trade-off. And that's, I think, what they should have done. And then there would be no complaints about it. And you could have had that happen first. You could have had the women actually back quicker than anybody else in that regard. And you could have had a weekend before the Premier League comes back. You could have had this weekend, as the Women's Super League return and make it a big deal on BBC.
What smart
really
marketing it
blow
would have
it
been.
up.
Oh, yeah.
And in the long run, it would have paid off for them because guess what? Next thing you know, there's companies watching that want to sponsor the Women's League, or they see the value in it. They see the numbers. They see the viewing figures. And instead, they told everyone that has thought about investing in the women's game, you know what, don't worry about it because we don't care, so why should you? You know, I think this is a decision that has more, I don't think I'm blowing out of the water. I think that this is a decision that has said a lot about the FA's authenticity when it comes to where they really prioritize women's football in their ranking.
Yep. So, Jess, let me ask you this. If the 2021 Super League season doesn't start till September, you're missing an opportunity now by not being the first group back and finishing your season where, Liverpool's a point back with 8 matches to play, and you have 3 teams within 0.2 of a point of each other to determine champion and points per game. How big of an opportunity is missed here, and how big a hit is it going to be, do you think?
I don't know. I think it really depends on, Liverpool had to make a statement because Liverpool, you can tell the women's side are worried about what this relegation is going to do to them, because there is a huge difference between taking your kid, your young daughter, to go watch, Liverpool play against Man City in the Women's Super League to a game in the Championship. It's different. So I think that it's concerning for these teams about, are they going to be behind closed doors in September? It doesn't impact the Super League quite as much because when you look at the average viewing figures, they're pulling about 15 to 20,000 fans per game week throughout all the game fixtures. So it's not as big of an issue. But I think what the concern is, are the players happy with how they've been treated? What about these players that are out of contract? I've seen Reading releasing, they've had 10 players that just went out of contract and didn't get to finish their season. You have to wonder how these teams are going to rebuild their squads, how they're going to have to replace players without a budget. These players that are all free agents, where are they going to go? I think a lot of these teams are going to be unrecognizable, and it's concerning to me. And hopefully there isn't, a bunch of Yeovil towns to come in terms of, going into administration and being bought out by people that don't necessarily have the best intentions. And as you mentioned earlier in the show, sometimes people have the wrong intentions with buying a women's team. Maybe it's fashionable, maybe it's a lower level to get into the game, and then they don't realize that it costs a lot of money with not too much bang for your buck to begin with. So I think it's a big year, John. It's important, and hopefully the Euros and the Olympics and whatever's to come will, inspire something on the international level. But domestically, I'm worried that maybe England has shot themselves in the foot, considering we were singing their praises all World Cup when we were talking about domestic leagues. I think they've shot themselves in their foot, and it's countries like Germany and countries like Holland that are shining at the moment because they're showing that the grassroots in the women's game is actually valuable to them.
You mentioned there's a lot of players out of contract. It's the same in Liga MX on the women's side as well. There was an article in El Universal saying that 70 players had been released due to COVID-19 from Liga MX squads. I mean, that's, 3-4 squads that are released that are just out of contract. And, I mean, we've seen what happened with Morelia, now Mazatlan, who they didn't even tell the women that they're moving. The team is moving to Mazatlan. Probably those players are all out of contract too. There are some negatives on that side, and this is something that FIFA has some money to work with too, and maybe FIFA is going to need to invest some of this if national federations can't get their work done. What do you think about the NWSL? They did find a way to come back. It might be a short-term thing. It might be it for the season. There is that possibility. But they are going to get their games on CBS. They're going to get 2 games for the first time ever, women's club matches on broadcast TV in the U.S. What do you think about the format and how important it is for them to play?
It's better than nothing, that's for sure. And like you say, with them being on CBS, I think we were talking about it, the pass is $5. I think a lot of people are going to do it. A lot of people are going to want to get to watch their games in. Is it disappointing? I'm
ready to pull the trigger. I'm going to do it when it's time.
Take my money. My money. But I think we're missing some players. I'm not sure who said they're not coming back yet. Obviously, we know that Rapinoe's not.
Only one is Rapinoe so far, and she hasn't said it. And I'm really surprised she hasn't said it after her coach said it.
Her coach pulled her out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really going to be a surprise when she announces it. It's not going to get the dramatic reaction that maybe she would have been expecting from that mic drop.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's happening. I think that who knows if it goes well, maybe they'll extend the season, but it's better than nothing. And we're going to get some women's soccer on TV. We're going to get some quality football. They've got some time to train. And you know what? I'm glad it's going ahead. I was a bit critical last show saying that, I wanted to make sure it was worth the quality that was going to be produced. And I kind of eat those words a little bit because now that England's been cut and I'm seeing the impact that has, I'm glad it says a lot about the NWSL that they are investing and they see the value in it. So that's the most important thing.
It's just, I think we had the questions about the Bundesliga and does it look pretty good? I think it looks pretty good. I think it looked pretty good quickly. Is it exactly the same intensity? No, not across the board. There's some games that feel flatter than normal. There's some games that you don't miss a beat at all. It'll be the same in Spain. It'll be the same in the Premier League. It'll be the same in MLS. I mean, it's, playing without fans in the stands is different. And coming back in this kind of format is different. You don't prepare for
football
this.
Is different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
As well. With it being a tournament, it's going to change everything because you know what? Winner takes all, and you can battle bloody hard for 90 minutes and get a result. And honestly, I think that kind of makes it more exciting viewing. A lot of neutrals, which realistically, a lot of the people watching NWSL are going to be neutrals. Not too many people have their team that they're attached to. So for the neutrals, tournament style, that's going to draw a different attention because you can pick your favorite. You can pick your person that you're rooting for, the underdog, and they actually have a chance, and you only have to follow them for a short amount of time. So I think the tournament style kind of suits that neutral element that you've got in a league like NWSL.
That's a great point. And that's where I think NWSL's got it right. Because you're going to be able to get back on the field. You're going to be able to figure out a format that gets people engaged, and it is going to raise the intensity. It's not like a random Bundesliga game that doesn't have that intensity built in. Every one of these games is going to have intensity built in because you're playing 4 group games.
Matter.
Every game matters.
When it comes to the production side, since we're not going to be there, how would you guys like to see things come across from CBS and the NWSL's point of view, whether it's extra microphones, a couple of cameras strategically positioned? What would you guys like to see that could enhance the broadcast for those who might be hopping in for the first time?
I'm not a fan of the fake crowd noise. I mean, if it's done right, it doesn't bother me. If it's done wrong, it bothers me. I'd rather just go with what's there. But to get the most out of it, you do have to have extra mics. I think that's going to be a must. You're going to have a great sound engineer. That's going to be a must. The extra camera angles and stuff, I'm good if you have the right producer who knows when to use them and uses the switching, but also using them in replays in a lot of ways. Like I think sometimes when you have those new toys, it's like you go to it in live action, and it's not really a live action kind of shot. Like the one that I think of like that is the overhead angle that the NFL uses on kickoffs. Like it's really cool on a long return when they show it in a replay. I don't need to see the live action that way because I want to actually see what happens.
Yeah.
No,
you know?
That makes sense. And sometimes overusing of the different cameras.
Yeah,
like,
we kind of know what it's supposed to look like.
An angle that shows me nothing else. Like, if you're showing me a replay, if I learned nothing from that extra angle, then it's pointless. I get a behind a goal shot, a side angle, but if you're showing me the other side and there's not a player blocking, there's no point of it. You know what? Miking the ref could be fun. I saw the A-League that did that a couple of times with the refs mic. Stuff like that is a novelty. I'm not sure if it's suitable, but it can be a fun way to learn about the game and put a different twist on it. Definitely don't mic the players, though. Not a fan of... Like, it was a fun experience when Kazan was mic'd.
Yeah, an all-star game, it's fun.
Yeah.
But exactly. In a game that you don't have to take it seriously, the result doesn't really matter. Yeah. And I think that would be my concern, that someone would think, oh, let's do something like that, and then again you're kind of showing that you're not taking these games as seriously.
Yeah, just because it's an all-in tournament and it's something new and different doesn't mean that you need to throw all of the bells and whistles in there and sit there and treat it, and you don't need to treat it like a circus. Give it the respect it deserves and make sure that folks can appreciate the product for what it is.
100%.
Yeah, mic the ref, mic the coaches, and use that in like replay and halftime and post game stuff.
Yeah,
don't
sideline
put it live.
Interviews, like
What's
some
that?
good sideline interviews with with coaches. When I like to learn more about the way they're thinking, that kind of thing. I think those are always good, but don't get them at the wrong moment, because those can be awkward when you get the coach when they're clearly busy.
Yeah, you got to be careful with those, and don't run the live mic in the game broadcast, because some of these guys, you don't want to hear what they're saying live.
Or these gals, like I'm telling you, we got some potty mouths.
Oh yeah, maybe worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this goes down. The NWSL will start first, then MLS will start. MLS, you had 3 teams back to full training today. You had Atlanta, you had Sporting Kansas City, you had New England, all back in a normal training environment. 23 teams that got to catch up and got to get all their testing in, got to get all of their paperwork in to show their plans. I think Atlanta being one of the first shows how seriously they're taking all of this and how seriously they're going to take the resumption of the season. What do you think about the Orlando plan, or what little bit we know at this point, just that they're going to do it and there's going to be a group stage and then there's going to be a knockout, and that's the resumption of the season at this point?
I mean, again, I'm glad that they're going to start playing. It's scary as a fan with tournament football. Again, I don't have the same attachment to an NWSL team, so it's exciting. When you're a fan of a club, you start to get a little bit nervous, because with Atlanta United, with how we had seen, it was unpredictable sometimes. Sometimes you get in the best of the team. Sometimes you get in the worst of the team. And again, yes, they're starting training early. That's giving them that advantage. Yes, they've got a while to train, which will help get that cohesiveness together. But, tournament football is unforgiving. All it takes is one defensive error or one lapse of judgment, and that's your time done. So it makes me anxious as a fan. It makes me excited that we're going to get to see some sort of soccer. And, I think that they'll be looking to get ready to play ASAP, because obviously the last time they were out in the field, it was a game that we might want to forget a little bit.
Yeah, I really do wonder if they were distracted. I wonder if the news had started to cycle through at that point. The timeline would have matched up to where they would have, if they were paying attention to it, would have known that in the locker room before they came out. What was going on in the NBA. I don't know. We probably won't ever know, but it's a weird game. Like, I haven't gone back to watch it at all. I remember it as...
I don't want to.
Yeah, but it's weird. I remember it as really not being as bad as the scoreline indicated. The goals, one was a golazo. Wasn't one a deflection?
Yes.
And one was off a corner or off a set piece. It was kind of like, okay, and that was really all Club America produced in a big way, but they got the lead, so they didn't really have to produce a whole lot more. And Atlanta had chances. It wasn't like they weren't creating chances. It's one that feels like the scoreline is harsh, but I don't know if I want to go back and watch to double check that. I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah. But no, I think, Jason, you're right. The one golazo, you just sit there, you put your hands up and you just applaud and you go,
nothing.
That's a good one, nothing you could do. Set piece, understand those happen, and then the one off of the corner. So no, I think your assessment is accurate that the scoreline, it doesn't necessarily dictate what we saw out there for 90 minutes.
And you were missing 3 of your 4 on the back line, too.
That's
a huge element.
Yeah.
And again, this is where the recovery time is helpful. We're going to have time to get players back and ready.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I see a video that I don't know where it came from exactly. Atlanta United Fan TV posted it. Yeah. Joseph
Does it involve
Martinez,
a particular player? Yeah.
who had an ACL reconstruction done. When was it? April? Early April?
Yeah.
I think.
Probably.
Mid-April, the latest?
He's moving fast through that recovery, because I know a lot of you that tore their ACLs.
But that's the thing. Like, the doctor that he went to is known for fast recoveries. Joseph is a maniac, and he's going to work as hard as anybody ever would to get back quick enough. And, I mean, you know that an ACL now can be as short as 6 months. If it's not big damage and the recovery goes well, it can be as short as 6 months. I don't think he's anywhere near playing right now. It's been 2 months, if that. But could he be back before the season's over?
Maybe it's worked in our favor. There were people talking about again, off topic, but in Europe where players that were injured get cut off the squad, whether they'll be allowed to be put back on the squad because they're fit again. Yeah, I feel like, I'm sorry that time helped, And you know what? It will suit certain teams. It won't suit other teams, but we deserve a win every now and then, I feel like.
It's a huge one for Atlanta United to get everybody outside of Joseph back. That's big. You get everybody else back. Joseph, just being around the guys and working out is going to provide a lift. If he's able to get on the bench and start screaming at people, that's going to provide a lift, because people are going to play like they're terrified, because he might hit them
because they should be.
He has. Yeah. Those things are good things, and hopefully we'll see them soon. It feels like we're in a better place with soccer across the board. There are issues, as there always are, but it feels like we're in a better place right now, because we've got another big league in Spain coming back this week. We've got the Premier League, 9 days away now? It's all ramping up. It's all ramping back up. We know when NWSL is back. We think we know when MLS is back on July 9th, but that's not confirmed yet. it's starting to get back to normal a little bit. You've got something that's kind of normal this weekend, Jess. What is this high school scouting event that you're calling?
Yes, tell.
Yeah, I mean, super excited for this weekend. The Southeast All-American Sports are hosting a invitational for players all over the Southeast. They're coming from as far as Texas, I believe. We've got Louisiana. We've got all these states represented, and it's kids from class of 2020 all the way to class of 2022. 4 games, 2 games for girls, 2 games for guys. And I think what's so cool about being part of this is these games mean more than they ever would. So I was asked a long time ago before any of this COVID happened. And it was going to be a good opportunity. They've got a lot of coaches coming from big colleges. But now you've got to think, a lot of these kids missed an entire season. For those kids in class of 2020 that didn't get offers, that didn't get their show tape, this game means so much to them to be out there playing with these college coaches watching. And for those people that maybe want to get their early recruiting. So it's going to be super exciting. I'm going to be on the call. It's going to be on YouTube on Saturday. And how cool that they're able to do it. And I know they're taking a lot of safety precautions. There's going to be temperature tests, all of that stuff. And I'm really glad for those youngsters because the quality of the show tape I've got to watch, it's brilliant. I've seen a lot of golazos. I've seen a lot of good saves, a lot of good slide tackles. I think the games are going to be really good, and they're going to be playing for something that means a lot to them because, as I say, for some of them, it's last chance. You know, if you haven't got recruited by now, you really need to get that offer in. And actually for the colleges, they're probably grateful too because I know that a lot of college recruiting has been hit substantially. So it's an exciting time. It's at Silverbacks Park. And like I say, I'll be on the call on YouTube from 11 a.m. all the way up to 5 p.m. 4 games in a row. You guys know how that is.
Been there, done that. It's on YouTube. We'll share the links as well. And you can buy tickets. You can come out and watch too, right?
Yeah, they're going to be doing social distancing in the stand. As you know, Silverbacks Park is pretty big, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be, marking off those seats, spreading out around the edge. I believe it's $7 a ticket for the entire day of games if you buy in advance, or $10 on the door.
Cool. Well, we'll blast those links out from our social media. We'll share yours as well. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, and Jess, whose jersey are you sporting this evening for the show? That's one of the...
Oh, this is Deportes Quindío of the Colombian League representing. This is where I go visit when I go to Colombia. And Jason, I have a damn jersey for you that you still haven't got. I went
COVID and all.
And somehow it hasn't reached you. So we will get you rocking the Colombian League very, very soon.
I'm down. I tried to get. I'm trying to get some little things for my setup here since we'll be doing this going forward. And
I've got to get some soccer theme. It's looking a little plain and simple.
You got to get a backdrop. That's what everybody's learning to do these days as we're doing video shows. And I'm trying to add little pieces. I almost got a Diego Maradona starting lineup figure from 1990 in a Napoli kit, but somebody outbid me on eBay while we were doing the show. Very disappointed.
It was the show's fault.
I was sitting over here while John was talking about something. I was sitting over here like bid another dollar, bid another dollar, bid another dollar. I thought I was going to catch it for $10. No, the bidding went up to I think it would have been about 20. I'm like, that's too much. It's plastic.
Maybe Maradona's not worth that.
No, not that one.
Do we have a developing breaking news sounder?
We do. Hold on, I was not quite ready for that, but okay.
I wasn't.
What we got?
Jeff Reuter. The USL has finalized a $5.5 million relief package, which will be spread across the 47 clubs in the championship and League One per multiple sources. Major sources of revenue for the league include expansion fees, annual dues, and the ESPN broadcast deal.
The ESPN broadcast deal is
minimal.
A fraction of that. I think it's $1 million a year. Period. Is what I had heard. The major source of revenue is the expansion fees, and whatever the owners of the league, because USL is a little different. It has an owner. Like USL has an owner of the business that is USL, that is United Soccer League. It's New Rock Soccer Holdings. Papadakis is involved. I think Bob Hoskins is the other partner in it. There are probably more. They do they own the league. They bought the league. They make the money on the league. Francisco Marco started the league, and he did the same thing, and then he sold it to Umbro, and then Umbro was consumed by Nike. Nike didn't want to run a league, so Nike sold it to New Rock. And, yeah, I mean, there's money that's coming in. That's at the league level. So the league, and I'm assuming this would be, is the league is then basically creating its own solidarity fund and divvying that up to the teams to function this year, or probably to pay for a lot of the testing that it's going to take. And that's going to be an interesting component. And again, it's kind of the same situation we talked about with the women. You're going to have an Atlanta United 2 that's in a very different situation than a Charleston Battery or a South Georgia Tormenta, because Atlanta United 2 players might get the same, treatment and testing level and all that as the first team guys do, but independent clubs might need that money even more. So I'll be curious to see how that breaks up. And Badgermon on Twitch says that a major source of Forward Madison's revenue is in their sweet merch, which is true.
That's
yes,
true.
Their drip kit is strong.
Oh,
I generally don't
video.
like those kinds of kits, but that one's pretty good. They really
They
nailed
sell
the
it
way
with
that
the
one is.
video.
Yeah.
Whoever creates their videos, they're just brilliant. But they need to work on that USL stuff, because I have a lot of English players that are struggling with their visas right now. It made the news in England that right now, because they're load or they're not playing, they're breaking their visa rules. And I'll tell you, immigration is not an easy process to go through, speaking from experience. So
I think that I might be wrong. I think that got overplayed a little bit. I think the concern was if they don't play, then
it was in the Daily Mail, Jason.
There we go. So John's favorite Daily Mail, because they were still getting paid. Like, their contracts were still being paid. I think the part that they kind of either buried way under the lead or just left out entirely, if I remember right, if they don't play and teams broke the contracts because they didn't play, then the visa issue comes up, I think.
So they just got to play, which is
they were getting paid, so that's good. Nobody was losing any money on it yet, so that's a good deal. We'll have to see what it is going forward. There was talk about pay cuts, which is not pleasant, especially at that level, but we don't know what the revenue is going to look like. And, hey, look, it's changing. If Spain goes well, if other leagues open up and do things, if other events happen, then you're going to see it. And you're going to see USL do it. You're going to see it.
Easier to do in small leagues. It's easier to do in a USL where you're not looking at as big a crowd attendances. You're not looking at maybe the gatherings in the parking lot at the same level. So fingers crossed for USL. Love watching that on ESPN Plus and how you can see all the different games and different teams. So I really hope that can smooth itself out too.
We're almost back to all of it with all the games, every day. It's probably going to seem like, especially with the MLS tournament in Orlando, the NWSL tournament. There's going to be, from the NWSL start June 27th through probably the end of the MLS event in Orlando, and it's going to be, the way it overlaps, probably about 6 weeks in total. There's going to be games every day in this country.
Like the World Cup all over again.
Yeah. It's going to be nuts. We're all going to go insane because we're not going to be ready for this. We haven't been doing anything for a while in terms of talking about soccer.
Bring it.
Talking about games anyway. We talk about testing, and we talk about force majeure clauses and
force majeure down here.
This. Yeah, but talking about games, man, we're going to have to practice. You get that practice this week, though, Jess.
Exactly. We'll be ready and on the ball with our analysis, and I've been missing talking about goalkeeping blunders, so hopefully there'll be plenty of those for us to discuss, and I'll see if I can keep my GK Union shirt still.
Howlers down here.
Howlers down here. Oh.
Hopefully not for your high school goalkeepers. We need some high school goalkeepers to get college offers.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Please.
Well, I have heard as well, we talked about on the college side before we go, we've talked about it on this show in previous weeks, some of the smaller conferences at D1 have downsized a little bit. They're not playing some non-conference games. The conference tournaments have been downsized. Conference USA is not going to do that from what we've heard so far. Conference USA, I think players are back on campus August 1st, and they're looking at a normal season with fans. So that's the plan at the Conference USA level. I would assume that the ACC and the SEC and all the other major conferences would be doing the same.
we'll keep our fingers crossed because college soccer, and there's already been enough institutions that have lost their soccer teams. So let's keep the college soccer and that level alive.
Yep, lots of stuff that we're crossing our fingers for, but things are heading in the right direction. We'll be back next Monday for a show title to be named. We'll have one at some point. And we don't know what day it's going to end up being, too. We're going to have games every day, so I don't know what we're going to do once games start, because it's going to be chaos. But Soccer Down Here PM will continue, and we'll be back for sure next Monday. Jess, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, we'll be back with y'all in the morning. Mucha plata tonight, y'all.
Mucha plata tonight, y'all.
Chocolata.